So today we're going to be going over what I think are the best loadouts for the Recon class in Battlefield 2042. I've already covered both the Assault Engineer and now the Support loadouts as well. So be sure to go and check those ones out on top of this one. And if you guys are enjoying the Battlefield content, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. But with that being said, let's get stuck right into it. Now, like I've said in the start of every one of these videos, keep in mind these are just my own opinions in that there are no actual objective best loadouts in the game or anything like that. And I'm also not a master at each of these specialists either, so be sure to keep that in mind. Now, starting off with Casper, the loadout that I run for Casper is very much a typical sniper loadout. I run the Gold Sniper Magnum with the 6x scope, the extended mag, the bipod, and then the factory barrel. I then run the BF5041 for those up close encounters. I run the soft lamp to pretty much mark vehicles, making you not useless to your team, because often people who just sit back and snipe, they're not really impacting their team. So the soft lamp actually really helps out the rest of your teammates. And then lastly, I run smoke grenades, kind of just to give yourself a bit of cover if you need it. Now, like I said, this is a bit more of a like stereotypical sit back passive sniper. Now, don't sit back and be super campy. Don't sit up on the top of a building on hourglass and snipe across the desert. No one likes that. You're not helping the team if you play that way. Being that type of sniper is essentially useless to not only yourself, because you're probably going to get 3 kills a game, but it's also useless to the team. That being said, this is still more of like an entry-level sniper build where you can still sit back, you can sit at a comfortable distance and still impact the game and still actually be useful for your team. The reason I say entry level is because the more experienced snipers will probably play a lot more aggressively, using like McKay, for example, getting into really aggressive spots, but that is obviously harder to do. So that is why this is more of an entry level sniper build. And then, like I said, using the soft lamp on top of that, it is actually going to allow you to contribute to the team where you're designating those targets so that anyone else with the rocket launcher can much easier lock onto enemy vehicles, therefore taking them out, and therefore you are really still impacting the game. So play this like a regular sniper would in terms of that like stereotypical sniper, but with this build you can still definitely impact the game. Now, moving on, we have Rao, and the loadout that I run for him is the BSVM. Now, the loadout for this one is a bit different because I'm actually going to go through multiple different attachments, and the reason for that is because of the plus system. So I run the K8 hollow as well as the 5x scope, the close combat ammo as well as the high power extended ammo. For the grip, I just run the LWG grip, and then for the barrel I use both the shortened and extended suppressor. Now, the reason I've shown both of those is that you can essentially turn this from an SMG into like a DMR type of weapon through switching out the close range ones. So for example, the K8 hollow, the close combat, and the shortened suppressor, they're obviously the up close and personal build for this weapon. But then the 5x scope, the high power extended ammo, and then the extended suppressor, that will turn this into more of a DMR. So be sure to make the most of the plus system. You can turn this into essentially the most dynamic and versatile weapon in the entire game. For the secondary, I run the BFP50 or the Deagle, and then I run the C5 and the EMP. So obviously, as you can see, this is very, very good for sort of an anti-vehicle playstyle, which doesn't generally suit the Recon class. That's not usually what they're known for, but Rao is definitely better suited to that. You can be really, really helpful when it comes to like disrupting, scaring off, and even taking out vehicles as well. If you hack a vehicle, if you throw an EMP at them, or even just charge at them with the C5, you're obviously going to scare them off, and even just doing that alone can be very helpful for your team, on top of obviously using the C5 to actually take out vehicles themselves. Now, next up we have Pake, and although Pake is a very controversial specialist in this game, this is actually a really, really fun specialist to play when you are running this loadout. So the loadout for Pake that I run is the MP9 with the K8 hollow, the drum mag, the LWG grip, and the Type 4 heavy suppressor, and then use the shotgun once again for the secondary, and then I use the tugs and the throwing knives, which I know is a bit random, but I will get to that in a second. Now, this loadout for Pake is pretty much just purely for close combat, like almost a stalker type of playstyle, where you're getting really in and amongst the action and just being a menace to the opposite team. So you want to hang around in close quarters with this loadout. You want to use that EMGX scanner that Pake has to get as much information as you can. The same thing goes for the tugs. If you put that down in a high traffic area, it will mark people on the map for you. The more information you get is obviously going to be better when it comes to knowing how to navigate those situations, and therefore getting a few more sort of stealthy kills. Now, the reason I mentioned the throwing knives is that obviously when you use the EMGX scanner, if you see someone who is like stationary and they don't know that you're there, you can obviously use the throwing knife. It is a one-hit kill and it's pretty much unstoppable. They won't even have time to react to it. So obviously throwing knives are not super easy to use when you're just using a regular specialist. But if you're playing a specialist where you know where the enemies are and you can sort of pre-aim those throwing knives, they are literally more beneficial to you than a gun, because obviously with the gun, it takes a few bullets to kill. With the throwing throwing knives, it is literally instant. So I know throwing knives probably seem a bit random, but with Pake, they are actually really solid. Now, last but definitely not least, we have Camilla Blasco. The loadout that I run for Camilla is the MTAR-21 with the Fusion Hollow, the Extended Mag, the LS1 Laser Sight, and the Type 4 Heavy Suppressor. This is definitely a very fun weapon when it comes to like stealthy gameplay. I then run the BF5041, the Proc Sensor, and the EMP once again. Now, this is kind of similar to the Pake playstyle, but a bit less focused on getting kills and a bit more focused on almost like distracting and confusing the enemy team. With the EMPs, as well as her like scrambling device that she has as her ability, you can pretty much scare off a lot of enemies, at least when it comes to vehicles, just by putting those down or obviously throwing the EMP. And it doesn't really do all that much in terms of like damaging them or anything like that, but it does just scare off a lot of those enemies. The same thing goes for just regular enemies too. If they run into a building and all of a sudden they're sort of getting scrambled, they're going to panic, and that perceived pressure alone is actually really good to just help your teammates clean up easier. When there is perceived pressure, even if you're not actually doing anything, you've just put your ability down and then you're, 10 meters away from it, and someone comes into the building from the other side, even though you're not actually directly doing anything to them, it can start to make those enemies panic. It puts them a little bit on edge and it can cause a lot of mistakes. So Blasco is really fun in that sense of being almost like a bit of a ghost, where you're kind of like disrupting and confusing enemies. You might not even get all that many kills or directly impact that many situations, but you are going to have all of the enemies on high alert, and they're going to be sort of panicking, looking all around them and essentially getting distracted, at which point you and your teammates can obviously come in and sweep them out. So it is a very fun objective playstyle. Putting this down in objective rooms can cause a lot of chaos for the enemy team. But anyway, that is pretty much it for the Recon class. I'm keen to hear your own loadouts down below, because like I said, these are just my own opinions. There's no such thing as the best overall loadout. So be sure to leave your own loadouts down in the comment section. Like I said, all three of the other classes already have videos up, so be sure to go and check those out. And like I said at the end of the last one too, if you want other guides, be sure to let me know down in the comments just what you guys would like to see guides on. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.